So not too long ago, I was on Facebook, and a message popped up, and it was from a friend I hadn't talked to in a number of years, and he said, "Hey, Donnie, I think my son skateboards at the skate park that you opened." And I said, "What? Who is it? What's his name?" He said, "His name is Corey, and he's got long dark hair." And I said, "I know Corey." And it was a cool little Facebook exchange, and that weekend when I went to the skate park, I looked for Corey and I saw him skating, and I called him over and I said, "Come here, Corey." And he skated up to where I was, and I said, "Hey man, guess what? I know your dad." And he said, "You know my dad?" And I said, "Yeah man, I know your dad. He used to work at a shop up the street from mine and we're friends. I just saw him on Facebook." And he said, "That's crazy. I didn't know you knew my dad." And I said, "Yeah man, it's a small world, right?" And he skated away. And it was at least a month probably before I saw him again, but when I saw him again, this time he skated up to where I was, and he said, "Donnie." And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And he said, "Hey, have you talked to my dad? Have you seen him?" And I said, "No, man, I haven't seen him, not since that time I saw him on Facebook, and I told you about that." And he said, "Well, would you do something for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." He said, "The next time you see my dad or you talk to my dad, would you be sure to tell him that you saw me and that I said hi?" And it hit me. It doesn't take long working in communities you love before you realize that the biggest concerns have so little to do with bringing resources and so much to do with building relationships. My name is Donny Manco, and I've spent 10 years developing an idea or a set of ideas about what it takes to really build relationships and ignite community. My colleagues and I call this idea the framework, and it's been an extraordinary journey in the making. We've been testing out and living out ideas through trial and error in living laboratories across Fort Wayne. And the most extraordinary thing about the framework idea is that it's an idea meant for ordinary people. It's meant for ordinary people who want to make a bigger impact, who want to do more good in the world with their limited time and budgets. As an average person, I set out about 10 years ago to see what I could do to affect change in the community I loved, Fort Wayne. What could I do to implement positive change, to be a change maker? And furthermore, what can any average person do if they really want to change the world? You know, ordinary people, I found out right away, have limitations, but in Indiana, we take giving back pretty seriously. Indiana is actually above average when it comes to volunteerism statistics. We rank 24th out of 50 states. 27.3% of our residents volunteer on a regular basis, giving back to the communities they love. That means on average, an Indiana resident has about 2.5 hours a month that he can give back to the community. So the question, the biggest problem we face as people who want to make change is not that 2.5 hours of time is too little time to harness that volunteer force, focus it, and make a real impact in communities. What I found the biggest problem is, statistically speaking, is that most of an average person's volunteer time goes to activities that promote and engage in what can really only be accurately described as emergency-style, one-sided relief giving, the type of giving that has no long-term plans to develop solutions to the problems at their core. Issues that Fort Wayne faces now, issues like homelessness, hunger, all the ill effects of poverty. When addressing these issues, we primarily engage them in what could be described as the most kind-hearted way to waste money, to waste time, and to waste resources. And worse, we could actually be destroying a community's potential to self-actualize. We could actually be destroying their potential to build a capacity to do things for themselves and to bring about their own change. I think that as long as we continue to attempt to treat chronic problems with these emergency-style, short-term relief efforts, we are doing the communities that we hope to serve a disservice. Why? So the question is, what's so bad about this one-sided form of giving? It seems obvious that giving of your resources freely to people who need them, that seems like the right thing to do. And in a crisis situation, it's absolutely the first thing that has to be done. We are so quick in Indiana, and Fort Wayne especially, to respond to a crisis situation. I found so much compassion, but it is in our inability to transform out of this emergency-style relief into long-term development for these chronic problems. It keeps us trapped in an outdated paradigm, and it's a paradigm that's chock full of redundancy, wasted and misplaced energy. Unfortunately, most of what passes for charity here locally is outdated and it's one-dimensional. Robert Lupton is an author, and he wrote a book called Toxic Charity that details most of the shortcomings that we found ourselves in the framework through trial and error right here in Fort Wayne. But let me quote him to highlight one of the insights he has about this type of one-sided almsgiving to the community. You see, he details that there's an erosive process when you give freely without any attempt to make an equality in the exchange with the people you're helping. Let me tell you what his progression looks like and see if you recognize it. You see, first, when you give freely to a group of people who need your work, who need your help, you're going to get a lot of appreciation. And that's what most of us in our circle of interest look for when we go to help somebody. I've been in communities that were hungry and I fed them. And initially, you're going to get a ton of fanfare. You're going to get a lot of appreciation, and it feels good, and it makes you want to come back and do more. Unfortunately, that's where most of us stop in the process. But you see, when you go back and you give a second time, you're going to create a sense of anticipation. You're going to hear the people that you're helping begin to say things like, when did you say you were coming again? Are you going to come next week or next month? And so you come again and you give freely again, and then expectations begin to grow. I began to hear things like, I can't wait to see you next week, Donnie. I can't wait to see what you're going to bring. And it felt good, but I could see that something was going wrong. And then soon I began to see that the expectation gave way to entitlement. And I would hear things like, man, Donnie, I didn't get any of the pepperoni pizza tonight. That's not fair. You should bring more pizza. And honestly, you should probably bring stuff that tastes better because the stuff that you bring in is getting old. And if we're honest with ourselves, we'll know that 5 times in, we established dependency. Hey, Donnie, Jerry and I didn't eat dinner on Thursday nights. What do you mean you didn't eat dinner? Well, you always come on Thursday and you bring pizza, and we didn't see you, and so we didn't know what to do, so we didn't eat. And if we're honest with ourselves, we find that this is the type of thing we experience a lot in our relief work and our relief efforts. You see, short-term interventions have to be coupled with long-term involvement in order to make a difference. The type of involvement that involves building a community relationship with specific communities that have specific needs. So often we build solutions for communities based on generalizations only. We sit in boardrooms and we sit in church pews and we dream up what services poor people need, not what resources or services people of specific communities need. You see, it's only when you build that relationship and it's based on the pursuit of common interests that you're ever going to develop real and relevant solutions to the problems that we're fighting. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could establish new methods of engaging communities, building relationships with communities? Wouldn't it be amazing if we could build new avenues and new bridges so that people, average people, could spend 2.5 hours plugging directly in to the heart of a community dynamic so that we can affect change where it needs to be affected, at the center, at the core? The question in 2013 is, how can we move past our immediate care and begin to establish a future plan for the communities we love, a plan that fosters real relationships and long-term solutions? You see, we have to realize that the old top-down approach to community building is an outdated model. We have to begin to understand how real communities begin to grow and ignite. You see, building, even repairing, it's a completely organic process. It cannot be developed in a lab, this community building. It cannot be developed in a boardroom. It has to be developed organically inside the community, because building a community is like building an organism. It's not like building an organization. You build an organization from the top down, and you build a community from the inside out. The way organisms form, the first tiniest cells gathering together as a cluster, that's the seed of community. For me, it seems natural to compare community building to living cells, because the framework approach regards communities as being a single organism. And when all the organ systems in that organism are working effectively and efficiently, that organism is just going to thrive. Organisms have all the things you would think they would have in order to be successful. They have hands, hearts, feet, eyes, and minds. And these organisms grow organically. They take a certain amount of time, like the gestation period of a human infant, a baby. You can't rush that. It takes a certain amount of time to grow. So it's true with community. You know, when we form bridges into communities, we have to begin to step outside our own circles of interest, the things that concern us about the exchanges we're making with communities. We have to subordinate our own circles of interest to the interests of the people we're hoping to help. The framework approach sees that the construction of a community can be simplified into the convergence of 3 circles of interest. There are many circles of interest in any healthy community, but these 3 circles we found to be the seeds of stable community. We see that stable communities are formed when these 3 circles of interest come together and overlap and form a common ground. I think that the bond that draws these circles together, the circle of interest of the people who want to help, the people who need the help, and the people who have the resources that can make the help happen, the thing that's going to bond them together is a strong thing. It's got to overcome tremendous forces at the center of that community dynamic, because there are a lot of strong forces that are happening. It's the core. We call it the crucible, where real transformation can take place. This is where the representatives from each circle can come together and make relevant decisions about the future of a community. The thing that holds this bond together, it's the why we do what we do. You see, I've told you a little bit about what we do and maybe about how we do it, but it's the why we do what we do that forms the bond that holds this molecule together. It's like an unstable molecule. To keep it from imploding or falling apart, that bond has to always be there, and it's our why. The why is the why we do what we do, and it's the thing that identifies everyone in this group as we work together. And it's the fact that we believe in people. In a world where people are growing increasingly cynical in their attitudes towards their neighbors, we embrace a process that hopes to instill a new optimism in the way people see themselves and even strangers. We believe in the healing power of community. We believe that people coming together to engage in a common activity, it will benefit everyone in those circles of interest equally. Activities need to be designed to draw people together on a common purpose, all with the why holding the stability together. Let me tell you about just one of the several communities that we've built. We've used this organic process to build communities across Fort Wayne. We've built communities in Section 8 housing, Fort Wayne Housing Authority. We've built communities in nursing homes. We've built communities in homeless shelters. We have built communities on the streets of Fort Wayne, under the overpasses where our homeless population exists. It works. Let me tell you about the community we've been working with for the least amount of time, and that's the Fort Wayne skateboarding community, a group that I first met at Lawton Park on 4th Street, just in the shadow of downtown Fort Wayne, just across the Martin Luther King Jr. Bridge. When the framework first began to show up in the spring of 2010, we noticed that there was some sort of community happening, but that it was feral. Roles were undefined, and there was no support system coming into that group of kids. It is not far-fetched to say that Lawton Park on 4th Street is the toughest playground in the city. It is not far-fetched to say that the kids we work with at Lawton Park are not the toughest community in the city. They are the toughest community in the city that I have worked with. The subculture that gathers there regularly, though, they had something in place in order. It just needed to be organically grown. Now, I've seen my share of kids with issues and obstacles in this community, and I've seen kids that come from every background imaginable. But I believe in these kids. I believe in even the unlovable ones, and they are there. And when you hand somebody something like that, the power of belief, well, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Because that belief comes with the feeling of unconditional support, and that's an empowering feeling. All the working with the kids that we did in that first summer, I knew it was going to end because in the winter there was no place for them to gather and skate. We were going to lose a continuity that we had built. That fledgling relationship, we were scared we were going to lose it. You see, one of the main things that these kids lack is a sense of stability and predictability, and we hoped that we could find a way to become a constant in this community. So what these kids needed more than anything was an indoor skate park. Lawton Park is a great park. It's an imperfect miracle. But until these people, these kids had a place to gather in the winter so that they could stay on their skateboards, focused and out of trouble, well, we just weren't quite done. With some encouraging and a little direction, this community we had organized and built decided that instead of waiting for some sort of change to come from outside of themselves, that they would create that change necessary from inside their community. It was a breakthrough moment for everyone involved, and it was exhilarating to see this community come to life and to begin to do things for themselves and move towards self-sufficiency. You know, it was a tough road, and it was a lot of hard work, with a lot of positive energy coming from a lot of different sources. But after a long campaign to gather resources and funding, the funding it would take for these guys to open their very own self-run skate park so that they could meet in the winter, well, the dream finally became a reality just 5 months ago in November of 2012. New Republic Skate opened its doors to the community that built it. This is a park that's run by skaters, it's managed by skaters, and it's supported and self-sustaining by the skaters that built it. Let me tell you how we did it. Because it's a simple formula. We don't believe that a solution is doing everything for someone in a group. You have to find the indigenous leadership in the group you want to help. You have to foster and nurture that indigenous leadership. We found a process whereby we could identify leaders and then walk them through what we do, teaching them how to do what we do. First, the leaders would come and see what we were doing. We would work, and then eventually they would help. And then they would work, and we would help, and eventually they would work and we observe, a system whereby we passed on what it was that we wanted to see them doing. We pull away and we watch these people now doing for themselves what they never thought was possible. We believe, as the saying goes, that you cannot permanently help someone by doing something for them that they should or could have the capacity to do for themselves. Within 3 years, this urban skateboarding community had organized and self-actualized. And when as a group they finally did move into their own space, a 12,500 square foot warehouse, the first thing they saw to do was to give back. They allocated 3,500 square foot to a community center, not just to benefit them, but to benefit the entire community around them. As a burgeoning community, these skaters in 5 months already knew that their success would be tied to finding common ground and developing an interconnectedness with the East State community where they found themselves planted. So now let me tell you, with the help and the generosity and the holistic thinking of about 100 kids with dirty faces and ripped jeans, there's a community center that they opened for other people on State Street. It comes with a cooperative food pantry that instills a sense of initiative and not a need for begging. It comes with a technology and resource room so that people in that community have the same access as information that we do. There's a living street art gallery. There's a homework assistance program, and even a program where young people are learning to silkscreen t-shirts so that we can develop an entrepreneurial and self-sufficient attitude in the indigenous leadership in generations coming up. So just think what we can accomplish now in Indiana. Just think what we can accomplish with our 2.5 hours if we work to develop new ways of engaging relationships with communities. If anything that you've heard today resonates with you, I ask you to move to action and join us. Don't join us as an organization. Join us as an organism fighting on the front lines, establishing new ways to engage communities in new relationships so that average people can make a difference and change the world. Thank you.